So admittedly, I'm starting the filming of this video without yet knowing how this is going to go, but we are playing around, trying something new, and hoping it works. So, Mark III gauge clusters. There are a few options from factory if you want to change this in your car. You have a few choices straight from Ford if you want to go to this level of detail. This here is just a regular non-ST, non-RS cluster, as denoted by the blue needles. Nothing fancy, black faces, simple, clean, tidy, works. You can, if you want, switch it out for the cluster from an ST or an RS. Easiest to spot by the red needles on it. This one here is Mario's out of Selsun. You also get with ST and RS clusters a higher displayed speed on the speedometer. But beyond that, that's kind of what you get from Ford. So you can have a base cluster, you can have ST and RS, or if you want to go a bit further, what you can do, and what we have done in the past with a couple of cars now, is get new gauge faces from Black Cat Custom. So this is the original cluster out of Mustard. This is back when I had it on the original engine. So as you can see, I'm trying to get the glare off the lenses for you guys. Full yellow tachometer, and then all of the faces have been greatly simplified. A lot of the extra numbers, dashes, details have been removed. The inspiration for that came from the TVR Sagaris, whatever you want to call it, which has gauges very similar to this with just the absolute bare minimum of info on them. You can see, for instance, the speedometer is just 2, 4, 6, 8 for 20, 40, 60, 80, etc. So that is what I ran for a few years. It was really cool, got a lot of compliments, but when I swapped the car, we then also swapped in Mario's cluster to match, to have the mileage of his engine, have another part of the ST conversion, etc. So since then, this was kind of put away and not forgotten about, but just kind of left. You can see it's a bit dusty. However, now Mario and I are playing around with some ideas we had to personalize his cluster and maybe go a bit further with this. So I'll pull this off. First thing we did, you'll see here on his surround, the chrome, silver, whatever you want to call them, let's call it chrome in quotations, trim rings are now satin black. I went and painted those for him. Middle one pops out, that's pretty easy. These two outer ones are glued in, so that was all done via masking. And that was a good first step to personalizing his cluster a little bit. But now we want to try something else. So set all these pieces aside. I was at the junkyard the other day and found a few Mark IIIs. Fortunately, they had some, and we pulled, Brian and I, the clusters out of most of them, and we have started to take these apart and experiment. So should probably rewind a bit here first. To pull these apart, there's just a series of clips around the perimeter. Undo all of them with a flathead, trim tool, whatever works best for you. Cover comes off, and the actual lenses themselves come off, and then you are left with this. So the first thing we are trying is painting the needles. You'll see here, this is one of the sets I had gotten. I went and masked them off, sanded down the original blue finish, and then painted them black. So we'll see how that looks on his faces. Is something a bit more subtle. Yes, it will be a bit harder to see in daytime, but we're going for a clean look, and he does have the access port for the information should he need it anyway, as well as the digital screen in the middle. But that is the first test of our idea of painting these as another way to personalize these. With the other sets I have here from other clusters, we're going to try some other colors and finishes too, for perhaps Dijon, perhaps Mustard, maybe play around, see what we can do. But yeah, this here is definitely getting into the little details. This was not easy to do. Took a lot of time to mask and prep and paint, but it should be pretty cool if it works as we imagine it will. So we are currently getting ready to fit these to Selsun, turn the car on, light the cluster up, and see how they look. Needles take a little bit of work, but they just pull straight up, and then with them out of the way, you just have these two little tabs in the middle holding the actual gauge face in. It pops out, replace it for whatever you want. But Selson might see gauge faces in the future, maybe. For now, we're just focusing on the needles, so we're going to use this donor cluster as a test bed to see how this works for now before we monkey with Selsons, because when you take the needles off, you do have to realign them afterwards. So we'll plug this into the car without a cover on it, turn the car on, let it run, and make sure all these are pointed exactly where they should be so that everything is reading properly. So at least in daytime, the black needles seem to be pretty legible. It does have the digital speedo in the middle though. Should it ever be too hard to read that. But the real test will be nighttime when all this is lit up. Just all that's left is that little bit of silver right there. But that's, I think, stain. I think might be too much to take that out as well. Alright, let's get home and reassemble it. There's a decent look at the one little plug you have to undo. See if I can, yeah, see if you can get it without really looking.
Push in, pull the flip tab, pull out.
And that's it. Alright, so we'll say that's test successful. Now we'll move these over to the real cluster. Ooh, there we go. That's the last one off. Mario will go nurse his wounds, and we'll now fit this to the car and get them calibrated. So whenever you change needles on these, they will be misaligned despite your best efforts. That's just how it goes. So temperature when the car is warm at operating temp will always be dead center. That's the easiest. Fuel, know where your car was before you took the cluster apart. Selson was full, so that one's easy as well. Tachometer, you should be able to know where your car's idle point is, or if you have an access port like Mario, you can check it on there. And in Mario's case, he's got the digital speedo to check his actual speedometer, or you can set it to 0, go for a drive, set cruise if you want at a set speed, and then see where this is reading and adjust them accordingly. So we'll do a quick spin, make sure they're all pointed as they should be, and then pull this back out, put it back together, and bolt it in for good. So with the OK button held down, put the vehicle into accessory. Wait a few moments, still holding the OK button. Alright, now it's in test. Press down, in this case, to go to the gauge sweep. It will do its thing. And everything should be good to go. We can now put the cover back on, plug it back in for good. And that should be this little project complete. Almost before and after. So completely normal non-ST, non-RS cluster. I think this was out of an SE. Not that it really matters. And then this is Selson's new piece. Black needles and black surrounds. That looks really good. So we've continued to work on this for the last couple of weeks and have tried many variations for the needles, different styles of painting, clear paint, opaque paint, fully painted, partially painted, etc. And this is what we have finally ended up with for Mario's new needles. At the end of it all, we're going with matte black needles and satin black trim rings, leaving the sides exposed and also leaving the very tips of them exposed so that those will still light up once these are back in the cluster. Testing shows it should work pretty well. It should be pretty easy to read and still give a almost fully blacked out appearance for them. So now it's time to reassemble these individual pieces and put them back in the cluster. Come around here. Let's see. Yeah, like I'm at an off angle so I can see the red glowing underneath it.
It still looks good.
That's kind of cool.
And let me turn up the...
Oh yeah, you keep your cluster down, that's right.
Yeah, that's way better. And you got the line pretty much dead on.
Yeah, well, the width of that is like one piece of Tamiya masking tape, and those are like half a strip of Tamiya masking tape, so I could keep them all
good.
uniform.
Yeah, that's way better. I like the red bleeding through like that.
Mm-hmm.
And they're actually solid this time.
Yeah, good. Yeah, it'll be a little bit odd because you get the red glow being an RS, but then the needles were originally blue, so the tips will be a little bit
I'm okay with that.
confused in that sense, but it looks good. Alright, let me run around, hop in, and we'll get this all calibrated. So I'm sure I'll notice when I'm editing, but hopefully we've covered everything with this video. We've been filming this over such a long period of time, I'm admittedly forgetting what we have discussed and shared in past clips. So it's probably a month and a half after we started this process or something silly like that. But we have what should be the final revision of the needles in. Just getting it all calibrated now so they're all pointing where they should be. Black needles, of course, with the black trim rings around the bases. The tips of each needle, or tip of each needle, has been left exposed so that the light will glow through a little bit. And then once everything is set and pointing where it should be, we can pop the cover back on and Selson should be good to go. So life would be a lot easier if the harness had a bit more slack, but first step obviously is to plug in the connector again. It's just one of them, powers the whole cluster. Always a bit of a tight fit. Then the cluster itself clicks back into place. There's a little ribbed section, I think on the top, that you just heard the clicking of, so that's kind of retains it, keeps it in place, and then a couple of screws go in to really secure it. Cool. Alright, have you got these screws around here somewhere?
Yeah.
Hope you've kept track of them. If not, I have 100 spares.
Ketchup stash, because we're in Canada. I just need the Torx.
Yes, are they T20?
20. You can take one.
Okay, yeah, I'll take one. So yeah, 2 screws.
Pretty sure they're T25.
Go on the bottom. Well, I will find out in 1 second. Let me see here. T20. Ooh, which I almost lost down the steps. There we are. Mighty Car Mods POV screwdriver hand over here. Might have been easier with a shorter screwdriver. Don't know if you're hitting your column or not.
No, just enough room.
So obviously removing this is just the opposite of the procedure we're showing you now, but 2 screws go in next. And then the cover simply clipped back into place on top of the steering column, and that's job done. Can pretty much take apart most of your interior with just like a Torx screwdriver, I swear.
Yeah, trim tool and a Torx, pretty much.
Cool.
I like how it bleeds out the middle now.
Mm-hmm. I think that was definitely worth the time and effort. Yeah, now I can see like the red tips lighting up now that we're in a darker environment. And so that is job done for Selson. It's a lot of work for a fairly subtle change, but that is what we do. Anyway, I hope this has given some ideas if you are watching this and want to customize your own cluster. It's not exactly the most time-efficient modification. Took a lot of effort to break everything apart, prep it all, paint it all, reassemble it, but it's certainly been worth it. Something different. And then I guess next step will be Mario getting some Black Cat custom faces in the future to match the new needles. Until then, however, black rings, black needles, black trim, and then the new black painted shifter trim and door spears. And altogether, the interior is looking pretty good. So now begins the task of editing this to make it somewhat cohesive, somewhat logical to follow. As I said before, this was many, many weeks of work. Just as schedules allowed, we can only meet up every few weeks to work on this and make some progress, so it has been quite a while since we started filming. Although we have now figured it all out, and you've seen the end result. So I look forward to hearing Mario's feedback on this as he lives with them and drives the car both day and night to see what he thinks of the new needles. As far as the initial test in my garage here and driving in the daytime is concerned, he's really happy with them. So that's it for today. Something new. I haven't really seen people mess with the needle before. Faces have been done many times, but not the needles themselves. And I'm quite pleased. Thanks for watching.